Before we start, I want to thank all of you for helping us get to 200,000 subscribers. We hit the milestone at the end of last week, and it was super exciting, so thanks to all 200,000 of you. Well, actually 206,442 of you at time of recording. It feels weird to follow up that thanks message with yet more plugs, but if this channel's good at one thing, it's plugging stuff. Our other accounts are kind of lagging behind a bit, so if you want to give them some love too, that'll be greatly appreciated. Anyway, on with the video. So as you probably know, last week May's deal was defeated for a third time. Despite that, she might be able to bring it back to Parliament again for a fourth time this coming week. You heard me right, fourth. Despite this, let's face it, the deal is pretty much dead. So now that May's deal, the only one the UK's negotiated, has been conclusively rejected on 3 separate occasions, what happens now? Well, as we explained in our video on the EU extension, the EU has basically said that Parliament has up until April 12th to come up with a plan. If they don't have a plan by April 12th, then hard Brexit it is, and the UK leaves with no deal. The UK would have had slightly longer if May's deal had gone through, until May 22nd, which would have given them more time to sort things out, but seeing as it hasn't, the deadline is April 12th. So unless the UK wants to leave the EU without a deal, it needs to request another extension from the EU. The EU made it clear that it's going to have to be a long extension. According to them, a short extension won't solve any of the problems. It will only mean another cliff edge in a month or two. So it will have to be a long extension. The EU has given the UK 2 conditions for any long extension. Firstly, the UK would have to take part in the upcoming MEP elections. Secondly, the UK would have to, in the words of the European Council, indicate a way forward. This basically means coming up with some sort of plan. Let's take a look at that first condition. Until recently, there was some hope that the UK might be able to find a way around this. Either the UK could leave the sitting MEPs in the European Parliament, or the main political parties could just appoint them from their own party lists, as Romania and Bulgaria did in 2007 when they first joined the EU. However, the EU has decided that this isn't appropriate, and that the UK will have to actually hold MEP elections if they want an extension that goes past May. So for this to happen, Parliament will have to pass a statutory instrument. In effect, they'll have to vote for holding MEP elections. Now, hopefully seeing as Parliament has rejected no deal and May's deal, they'll pass this instead. But this isn't a given. There's a chance that some MPs will want to signal to their constituents that they're against the idea of MEP elections. Or they might want to try and add some pressure to the EU into giving the UK an extension without forcing the UK to take part in MEP elections. Lots of MPs will be happy to say that they don't like May's deal or no deal, even though the only option this leaves is an extension. However, they might not be happy to endorse MEP elections, even though that's a necessary part of an extension. Yeah, it's completely illogical to say yes to an extension but no to what it entails, but these are MPs we're talking about. It's also worth noting that if they mess this vote up, they probably wouldn't have much time to do it again. While the deadline is the 12th of May, the UK will probably have to come up with a plan at least a couple of days earlier. Anyway, let's assume that Parliament passes the motion with no hiccups. The UK still needs to come up with a plan if they want the EU to sign off the long extension. This is what the indicative votes being held tonight are trying to achieve. If Parliament can show that there's majority support for something, like maybe a customs union or a second referendum, then the UK can go to the EU and show them that they've got a plan. However, whatever plan Parliament comes up with also has to be accepted by Theresa May and the government. For example, the customs union proposal, which was defeated by only 8 votes last week, was only supported by 33 Conservative MPs, less than 15% of the whole party, and goes against the express commitments of the Conservative manifesto. Even if this was to get a majority, supported by a tiny minority of Conservative MPs, it would still be against the Conservative manifesto, so could Theresa May really accept this as a new plan? May has signalled that she'd call a general election instead, but the EU might not be so happy to accept this. A general election doesn't necessarily solve anything, and might simply create more chaos. Imagine you're Macron or one of the more impatient voices within the EU. A general election might tempt you to cut the UK loose. A general election keeps Brexit going for at least another 9 months, which for TLDR's content schedule is great news, but not for the EU, especially as it might make things even more difficult depending on who wins that election. Anyway, I hope that wasn't too pessimistic for you, and we're not saying that getting an extension is impossible, but it's not as easy as a lot of people are saying. Parliament still has to sort itself out, and it requires the unanimous approval of the European Council, which isn't a given. especially if the UK can't come up with a good plan. We'll be covering tonight's indicative votes in detail. We'll have a video out tomorrow morning which explains what happened, so make sure you're subscribed for that. And we'll also have updates across our other social media accounts as the news happens. Follow us along so that you don't miss a thing. You can find us by searching for TLDR News.